A rivalry is starting to form between Ross Chastain and Kyle Busch. A lot of drivers are outspoken before the NASCAR Cup Series race took place at Atlanta Motor Speedway due to them reconfiguring the racetrack, and we got some big NASCAR 21 news to discuss here today on the channel. What's going on, guys? It's Daniel, and welcome back to another video. We got a lot of NASCAR news stories to discuss here today on the channel. Let's go into some straight news very, very quickly. We're going to start off with Sage Karam. As according to his dad, Jody Karam, he put out a tweet the other day, and he basically said that Sage Karam is going to need sponsorship, but he is looking to race in the NASCAR Xfinity Series at some point later this year. I think it's really cool that Sage Karam is definitely interested in racing in NASCAR. There has been a huge interest from a lot of IndyCar drivers to currently race in NASCAR. We've got Mark Andretti that is looking to potentially have a few races deal with an organization we don't know at the moment, but you got Mark Andretti that's looking to race in there. You also have James Davison, who was a former IndyCar driver who races currently in NASCAR. You have Santino Ferrucci, who hasn't racing IndyCar this year, but is also racing for Sam Hunt Racing in the Xfinity Series. It seems like the Xfinity Series is where a lot of these IndyCar drivers are going to right now to basically race in NASCAR. And I think it's really cool to see that we may see another driver. Now, where do I think that he'll be racing? I'll be honest, I really look right now at that Indy NASCAR doubleheader at Indianapolis Motor Speedway. I'm not sure what if Dreyer Reinbold is doing in IndyCar, if they're going to be running the Indy car race there. But we do know for a fact that it would be cool to see Sage Karam run. And to me, I hope Sage Karam does get an opportunity to race in the NASCAR Xfinity Series. I hope he gets a good opportunity. I wonder what organization to run for. But I think it's really cool that Sage Karam is going to be attempting to run at potentially some IndyCar, some Xfinity Series races. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we are talking about Ty Dillon. As Ty Dillon is wanting to run more races with Gaunt Brothers Racing in the 2021 season. He says they are currently targeting potentially to run Indy Road Course, Talladega, and Daytona. And he also did say, in talking to the media, he said that he's hoping to run some more Xfinity Series races later this year as well. Ty Dillon so far this year, 2021, has ran quite a few races for Gaunt Brothers Racing. The only race he's not run so far that Gaunt Brothers Racing has attempted was the first Talladega race when Harrison Burr would make his NASCAR Cup Series debut. I think Ty Dillon does deserve more opportunities with other organizations. I like to see Gaunt Brothers Racing run not just super speedways and the road course tracks. I like to see them run a lot of the playoff races this year. I think they do have enough inventory to run a lot of those races, so I like to see Ty Dillon run a majority of the upcoming races for the rest of the years. I think Gaunt Brothers Racing is capable of doing that. I think Ty Dillon also gets some decent finishes on the team. We've seen him run pretty well on the road course tracks. We've seen him run pretty well on the super speedway tracks. I like to see him run more races. As in regards to Ty Dillon running some more races, it's going to really depend on how many races do open up for our motorsports going forward, because really, just my opinion, it's really going to depend on how many races our motorsports is going to have available for him. So I think he's going to be mainly running for our motorsports, because time with JGR is done at the moment. So I think it's really dependent if he wants to run more Xfinity Series races. It depends on how much our motorsports inventory is open up for him to run. We'll have to keep an eye on the story for sure, but I hope Ty Dillon does eventually get an opportunity to race once again in the Xfinity Series and the Cup Series as well. And now we're going to go and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we are talking about Patrick Emery. As Patrick Emery is going to be making another Xfinity Series start later this year at New Hampshire, driving the number 23 for our motorsports. Patrick Emery has already ran this year. He ran at Bristol earlier this year and ended up finishing 20th, so it wasn't a great finish overall. But I think Patrick Emery, of course, guy that's racing wheel and modified tour, I think this track overall is going to suit him a lot better than Bristol, because like I said, he's a wheel and modified tour driver, and they run this track a lot. I think that experience is going to come into play, considering one, I think this car is pretty fast. It's shown top 10 and top 15 speed. Ty Dillon ran this car this last week and was contending for top 10. So I think he ended up finishing in the top 10 this past week in Atlanta in the Xfinity Series, and I think this car has capabilities to do that. And Brett Moffitt also was showing a lot of speed as well in the outer motorsports car. I'm really happy that he's going to be running once again. I think the goal for Patrick Emery this weekend is to try to finish in the top 15 and top 20. I think that'd be a really good goal. I think finishing in the top 10 would be really awesome. We've seen some good runs out of this car, but I think overall the goal for this number 23 team should be able to finish in the top 15 and top 20. I think they have the speed to do that, and I think they will have a good chance of doing that overall. Hopefully he'll run really well, and it's great to see that Patrick Emery is going to be back racing in the NASCAR Xfinity Series once again. Happy to see him back in this series for sure. And now we're going to go and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we are talking about Chase. There is going to be a new NASCAR documentary that is going to be coming out on Peacock, and it is going to be a new documentary called Chase. It's going to be debuting some point in August. I'm not sure. They didn't say exactly what week it's going to be debuting, but it's going to be debuting in August on Peacock. And it will be hosted by Dale Jr., and it will follow Elliott and Earnhardt as they explore Elliott's hometown. It's great to see that we're seeing a new NASCAR documentary. It was literally announced a couple days before that they're basically developing a NASCAR documentary that's going to be debuting on USA next year, basically called Race to the Playoffs or something like that, which will be exploring the drivers that are in the playoffs and who are at the top of the NASCAR leagues. There's also another documentary that's coming out on Netflix that's going to be detailing Bubba. Now, I'll be honest, with this series going on Peacock, I don't expect too many people to be able to watch it because you do have to have that subscription service. I know it's not that expensive to get Peacock overall, but a lot of people are going to want to have that on like a thing like Netflix. But it is great that we're continuing to see more NASCAR documentaries, and it's great that we're continuing to see this because even though I don't think the series is going to get a lot of viewership, I think you will have people that will overall subscribe to Peacock because Chase Elliott, like I said, is the most popular NASCAR driver. And to me, I think this is big overall that we're seeing another documentary come out, and there's been talks for a while now that there's potentially 20 new documentaries that can coming out in the foreseeable future, and we may be hearing a lot more about documentaries as we get closer to 2022 season. I think it's really cool to see that there is a new documentary that is coming out for Chase Elliott. Exploring Chase Elliott, we'll learn what his first job was and learn about his career coming up to this point, and see all people like Rick Hendrick, Bill Elliott, and his mother will probably be there to talk about. So I think it's really cool. There is a new documentary that is coming out, and great to see that overall for sure. And now we're going to go ahead and jump onto the next story of today's episode, as we're going to go ahead and talk about Auto Club Speedway. Now, there's been a lot of questions still in regards to the potential of them reconfiguring and changing Auto Club Speedway to a half-mile track. Bob Pockers reported yesterday that Auto Club Speedway's plan is to still reconfigure Auto Club Speedway to a half-mile track after the 2022 season. Now, originally they were supposed to reconfigure after this year's race and were supposed to get the new track next year in 2022. Unfortunately, because of the fact that we had the COVID-19 pandemic and California was extremely strict earlier this year. They're not as strict as they've been, but they've been really strict throughout the COVID-19 pandemic. There was no NASCAR race at Auto Club this year, and it was moved over to Daytona Road Course. So NASCAR made the decision when they made the announcement that they were going to let Auto Club Speedway have one last race for 2022 on the 2-mile configuration, and they're eventually going to go to a half-mile track in 2023. And they've already been calling this the next-gen move because, again, it originally was supposed to debut in 2022, but they're pushing it back to 2023. I've definitely seen a lot more backlash, and I think a lot of it is due to the Atlanta reconfiguration. A lot of people love the 2-mile track, and do not get me wrong, I do love the 2-mile Auto Club Speedway, but besides last year's race in 2020, I will say that the races at Auto Club have not been that fantastic. The only other race that I really enjoyed was 2016. I thought 2014 was pretty solid, and 2013 was pretty solid as well. But other than that, the Race Auto Club has not been great. I think the track is, like I said, is the second oldest surface out there, and NASCAR just made the cost decision to go out of it because if they eventually didn't repave it, it was going to eventually have to get repaved regardless. And NASCAR has been on this big tirade of basically turning a lot of these tracks into short tracks because they want to have them basically short tracks, road courses, and turn a lot of these intermediate tracks into super speedways. And I have no problem with them reconfiguring Auto Club into a half-mile track for great racing overall. I do think that unlike the Atlanta reconfiguration we're talking about soon, I think that we will see some solid racing overall, considering it's a short track. It's going to be basically a configuration, a hybrid of all three of the short tracks at Richmond, Bristol, and Martinsville. I think I'm really excited about this change for sure, and I'm glad that Auto Club is reconfiguring. I think they were going to have to reconfigure it regardless, so that was a big question that's been answered, and we'll be knowing about that really soon, and they will be doing that after next year. And now we're going to go and jump onto the next story of today's episode, as we are talking about the Slinger SRX TV ratings that came out from this past weekend. It was revealed today by Adam Stern that the SRX ratings from this weekend, the CBS, earned a 1.33 million viewers for Saturday night's SRX race at Slinger. The fact that a majority of the SRX races so far have gone from that 1.2 range to that 2 million range is really good to see, considering there was really no promotion coming into this year. The fact that the series has been able to maintain that as well and keep into that 1.33 million viewer range, close to that 1.5 million viewer range, I think it's absolutely really incredible to see. And I would not be surprised if next weekend's season finale at the National Fairgrounds, which is not only going to have Hailie Deegan, who's really popular on social media, and she's been really popular on social media recently with her and Paul Tracy's issues on the track, but you also have Chase Elliott, who's going to be part of that as well, who is the most popular NASCAR NASCAR Cup Series driver, I think those ratings are going to go up. And I do think that the future for the SRX is good, very, very promising going forward. And I mean, if they next year, I think if they continue to promote it like they have, if they start promoting it really, really big, you're still going to have that big viewership. But the fact that they've been able to maintain this ratings shows that, one, a lot of people are loving what they're seeing on the racetrack, especially since the racing, has been absolutely fantastic through the first 5 races. I mean, definitely the racing could be better, but this past weekend's race at Slinger was absolutely incredible and was absolutely fantastic. And to me, if you can keep people entertained and happy with what they're seeing on the racetrack, they're going to come back and continue watching. Compared to NASCAR, where a lot of people, some fans, are either leaving, there's not good promotion for that at points, And to me, I think this overall is really great to see the SRX ratings have been absolutely fantastic throughout the year. And I expect, like I said, I do expect next week's season finale to probably be the most watched one. Like I said, I would not be shocked if we get over 2 million viewers for the season finale of the SRX. But I do have some things I want to talk. I'm making a video coming up really, really soon talking about what I like to see changes going forward for the SRX TV ratings. But I am really happy to see that the SRX TV ratings, once again, are really, really promising. And it's really good news overall for sure. And now we're going to go and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we are talking about Kyle Busch here once again, as it was basically confirmed yesterday on social media by Samantha Busch that Kyle Busch is basically going to be retiring officially from the Xfinity Series after Saturday's race. Now, Kyle Busch won Saturday's race at Atlanta Motor Speedway, and remember a couple weeks ago at Nashville, he was able to pick up his 100th win. And he already said that he basically was planning on retiring after his 100th, basically got his 100th win, but he had to basically commit to finishing the year. But there basically has been talk, there's been, the sponsors basically are not really wanting to sponsor him for next year in 2022 so he can run Xfinity Series race. So it does look like this is going to be the end of Kyle Busch's Xfinity Series career. So look at Kyle Busch's Xfinity Series career. Kyle Busch has won 102 NASCAR Xfinity Series races. He won the 2009 NASCAR Xfinity Series Championship, and he's had an incredible career. I think they said he's at like 360 starts, something like that, and won 100 races. Basically, averaging a win once out of every 3 races. And don't get me wrong, I'm not always a big fan of Kyle Busch racing the Xfinity Series, but in majority of races this year especially, he's kind of had to earn a win. Now, Texas, he kind of got, this past weekend, he kind of got a little bit lucky with the situation between Daniel Hemrick. It's kind of a somber win, but I think Kyle Busch has had an incredible career in the NASCAR Xfinity Series. Whether you like him or not racing Xfinity, I think it just proves that Kyle Busch, knows how to get it done. These drivers got to step up at some points. That being said, if this truly is the last time we'll see Kyle Busch racing in the NASCAR Xfinity Series, thank you, Kyle Busch, for an incredible Xfinity Series career. Thank you for making fans really, really frustrated, and thank you for everything you've done in the NASCAR Xfinity Series. And now we're going to jump onto the first of the 3 major stories in today's episode, as we are talking about the NASCAR 21 news. We have been waiting for a few months on a major update when it comes to NASCAR 21 news and what they are going to be changing. And there was a lot of stuff that was released in regards to that today. There was an article that was made by Luke Riley, who basically does a lot of reporting for motorsports games, including basically F1, which came out this year, F1 games, basically Forza games, grid games, you name it, top tier motorsports games, AAA style games. The fact that he's reported on this is really, really great to see. And here's what came out from that article, what he was told from Motorsports Games. There is going to be a new engine that is coming to the Sings, which is the Unreal Engine, which is going to be the 5th installment of that Unreal Engine. Now, for a lot of people to know, the Unreal Engine is on some of the biggest games out there. PUBG, Fortnite, even some of the biggest racing games like Grid. I think Forza might use the Unreal Engine, I'm not exactly sure, but on some of the biggest racing games and on some of the biggest games out there, they use the Unreal Engine. And from the screenshots we've seen so far that have come out, they look absolutely incredible. The graphics, I think they are the best graphics I have seen, to be honest with you, since probably NASCAR or even in the Eugenics when their graphics department, which I think Eugenics games were not that fantastic, to be honest with you. But the graphics for this look absolutely incredible, and the best graphics I've seen in a long time. They're saying that they want to turn this into a AAA platform. Another thing that is going to make people very, very happy, including myself, is that there is finally going to be a really, really good paint booth. We've been able to see some customization, which the customization hasn't been great because they've basically been using custom templates on those cars in basically the NASCAR Heat Series. but there's going to be a full-scale paint booth. We've been asking for this for a long time, really since the first or second installment on many, many people's wish list. And the fact that they are probably going to have a full-scale paint booth is really, really awesome to see. Another major thing that is going to be in this game is going to be ray tracing, which ray tracing, you're going to have to probably have the PlayStation 5 or the Xbox Series, that's the Project Scorpio, or you're going to have a really full-scale PC that is really, really upgradable. And what ray tracing I think is going to be able to do, I think it is going to be able to have day-to-night transitions, and people have been begging for legitimate day-to-night transitions. You had some of that in the NASCAR Heat Series for the 5th and 4th games, but they were not really day-to-night transitions. The fact that there's a very strong chance of day-to-night transitions, which could have an element to making the racing very different and changing your car, I think is really great to see. The changes that they are bringing to this game make me really excited. I have not seen this much positive feedback and hype for a NASCAR game in years. The hype for this game is absolutely unreal since probably NASCAR, the game 2011. There has not been this much hype, and I can tell you I've been getting more and more excited of all the things they've been talking about, all the things we've been hearing about. I think that this overall is fantastic news for sure, and I'm definitely looking forward to the future of NASCAR gaming, and they're using the Unreal Engine, which makes me really, really happy. The future of NASCAR gaming is really, really awesome, to be honest with you. And now we're going to jump on to the next major story of today's episode, as we are talking about the feud between Kyle Busch and Ross Chastain. Now, if you watched the end of the NASCAR Cup Series race this past weekend from Atlanta Motor Speedway, we saw that there was a battle between Kyle Busch and Kurt Busch. And Ross Chastain, who was Kurt Busch's teammate, basically went up to the high side and unfortunately kind of blocked Kyle Busch. And because of the aero issues that do happen on these cars, Kurt Busch basically caught up to him and passed him with around 20 laps to go. Now, we have some sound bites that basically came out from this past weekend. Let's start off with what Kyle Busch said. During his post-race interview, I think it was either with Dave Burns or Dillon Welch, he basically said that shows you what kind of driver he is, referencing Ross Chastain. Then they talked to Ross Chastain, and he said, Kurt asked for the bottom, and I gave it to him. That's what he said. And then he basically said, was aware of what was going on. Now, this situation is very, very similar to what happened the last time we were at Atlanta Motor Speedway, where Kyle Larson got and was trying to get around Joey Logano and really never could pass him. And, of course, Ryan Blaney, who was his teammate at the time, basically kind of got by Kyle Larson. I don't think Kyle Larson's tires were that good, and it was a very similar situation. But I saw a lot of people that were kind of happy with Ross Chastain's move and Joey Logano's move. I wasn't mad what Joey Logano did. He was trying to help his teammate. I saw some fans that were basically saying it was F1 team orders, which if you can't do that in F1 because you get the blue flags, or you probably could get suspended for that. Now, like I said, this is not the first time that Ross Chastain and Kyle Busch have had history. In fact, they've already had history this year, as a matter of fact. Back in Phoenix, they had issues late in the race. There was some contact between them. So I do really think that there is essentially a rivalry that is forming between Kyle Busch and Ross Chastain. I don't really think they like each other, to be honest with you. Now, Kyle Busch, of course, I think absolutely had every right to be frustrated with the situation. I think he handled the interview not too bad. He was really, really grumpy, though, from what I heard. And to me, I think Kyle Busch had every right to be frustrated. But I think Ross Chastain is going to help his teammate. We've seen it in the past. And, you know, I think it is what it is, a situation. Personally, I'm not going to tell you who's in the right and who's in the wrong, but I do like that we're seeing a rivalry form between them. I think rivalries create really, really good stories, and it could really bring people and attract fans that are not even fans of NASCAR, could bring to sport. And I hope that we overall get to see a really good rivalry between Kyle Busch and Ross Chastain. But it was very interesting to comments of Kyle Busch. And Kyle Busch also, later in the May availabilities, was not very happy. Ross Chastain really doesn't care, to be honest with you. So I hope that a rivalry continues to form between the two, because it's going to give us some really good headlines to talk about. But very interesting that there is a rivalry that is forming between Kyle Busch and Ross Chastain. And now we're going to jump on to the final major story of today's episode, as we are talking about the drivers speaking out in regards to Atlanta reconfiguration. Yesterday, Noah Lewis covered the story very, very well, but the media basically was asking drivers about the Atlanta reconfiguration. Drivers were asked about the reconfiguration, and the only one that really said that he kind of may have been talked to was Kurt Busch. He says he was probably the only one that really had any talk about it. And a lot of the drivers overall were more outspoken during the May Day availability. Say we saw that Kevin Harvick was not very happy. Basically said that no offense to iRacing and stuff, but that's not always the best tool to use when it comes to basically designing a racetrack. And he also said the drivers are starting to get frustrated. Denny Hamlin also said that he's really frustrated about the drivers not being heard so far and not being listened to and being out of the loop in situations. I do think this past week, when it comes to drivers' frustration and all that stuff, I think that this is the first time in a long time that we've seen drivers this outspoken. And it's great to see overall that drivers are becoming more and more outspoken in regards to the situation of the reconfiguring track. I think most drivers would agree that, and some of them probably would not like it repaved. I think most drivers agree that they overall need to repave the racetrack. I mean, the track literally during the Cup Series race today was starting to come up, and it's been 25 years since because they're planning on repaving and reconfiguring the track. I don't think a lot of drivers have a problem with them repaving it, because personally, I think it needs to be repaved. I think drivers would agree with that. I think the reason that drivers are starting to get overall frustrated is they're not being listened to, and they're not being heard, or not being allotted in these meetings. And I personally disagree with that. I think that these drivers need to be in these meetings and need to be heard, because they're the ones putting on the show. NASCAR fans are going to listen to drivers a lot more than what the media says. They're not going to listen to something that Brandon Hutchinson says, or Steve Swift says, or Steve Phelps, or Steve O'Donnell, or even John Probst. They're going to listen to drivers like Kyle Larson, Denny Hamlin, Kyle Busch, Kevin Harvick, Chase Elliott, Ryan Blaney, Martin Truex Jr. They're going to listen to those individuals a lot more than they're going to listen to the top parts. We've seen Kyle Larson get frustrated. We saw basically how he said, that they should have talked to the drivers, especially when Kyle Larson said he's basically had a race at 100 different racetracks throughout his career. But he also said that fans do like a lot of crashing and stuff. We've seen Denny Hamlin on Twitter going on spots talking about he was pretty pissed off about them reconfiguring the track, basically saying that these are the same individuals that basically changed up Bristol, they changed up Kentucky, and they changed up changed up Texas as well. Texas basically lost one of their points-paying race. Kentucky no longer has a race, and Bristol turned one of their races into a dirt track. And he basically was also saying, drivers need to have more of a say in it. And I personally, like I said, I've said this a couple times on this channel this week, I don't have a problem if they listen. They got to listen to the drivers. They got to start listening. They don't have to take everything into account, but they need to at least have these drivers in these meetings and need to let them have them, because at some point that needs to change. Things overall need to change when it comes to the drivers. Drivers need, in my personal opinion, need to be in these meetings. They need to be allowed to have their thoughts and be allowed to say what they want and be able to speak their mind. And again, they don't have to agree with everything the drivers want, but at least take what they want into account, because these drivers are who are basically putting, you guys are making the money for you. They're the ones that are putting on the entertainment. And like I said, fans are overall going to listen to the drivers a lot more than they are going to listen to a bunch of executives who've never designed racetracks or really have never worked on race cars in the past. They're the ones that are basically thinking, because I think the executives want really awesome racing, but at the same time, I think drivers want basically to put on a good show, but at the same time, and they'll probably listen, but if you at least listen to the drivers that are overall putting on the show, you're going to have a lot better of a product, and you're going to have a lot better, more happy drivers. The fact that a lot of drivers were outspoken, like I said, we've not seen before, I think shows that NASCAR needs to start listening, because you're going to see a lot of frustration and more frustration going forward. That's just my honest opinion on that, but they need to start overall, in my personal opinion, they need to start listening to the drivers a lot more, because it's been a bad week for them in the PR side of things with the whole next-gen safety debacle. It's time that NASCAR starts listening, because you may have a drivers union that forms in the future as well if things don't change very quickly. Thank God we have some off weeks coming up here really, really soon, because I think that the tension may start slowing down just a little bit. But things have to change overall very, very soon, or we're going to run into a lot more problems going forward. So, anyway, that is today's NASCAR news video. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe to the channel, turn notifications on notified when a video does go live on my channel. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, Patreon as well, link description below for that, and comment your thoughts on today's video. What are your thoughts about the Ross Chastain and Kyle Busch feud, and do you think that it's going to escalate more, or do you think things are going to calm down between the two? Let me know in the comments below. And what are your thoughts about the NASCAR drivers speaking out about the reconfiguration, and do you think that they're in the right or not? Let me know in the comments below. Anyway, like I said, I want to thank you guys for watching today's video, and I'll see you guys next time with some more great and awesome NASCAR content. Take care, everybody.